I am Maurice, 34 years old, and a successful architect based in Boston. Life has been good to me lately, but it was not always this way. When I was 14, my father walked out on my mother and me without warning, leaving us to struggle emotionally and financially. I thought that chapter was closed until last month, when I received messages from stepsiblings I never knew existed. They were determined to orchestrate a reunion between me and the father, who abandoned me a decade ago. Before I tell you what happened when I finally came face to face with the man who walked away, tell me where you are watching from today. If my story resonates with you, consider subscribing to join our community of survivors and thrivers. My early childhood memories with my father, Thomas Jackson, were mostly pleasant. We lived in a modest but comfortable home in suburban Chicago, where my mother, Sarah, taught kindergarten, while my father worked as a real estate agent. From the outside, we appeared to be the perfect American family. Dad taught me to ride a bike in our driveway, cheered at my Little League games, and sometimes let me help when he fixed things around the house. I remember how he used to ruffle my hair and call me his little architect whenever he caught me building elaborate structures with my blocks or sketching house designs. That nickname turned out to be prophetic, though he would never see it come to fruition. The first signs that something was wrong came when I was around 12. Dad started coming home later and later. The warm, engaging man who used to ask about my day at dinner gradually transformed into a distracted stranger. There were hushed phone calls behind closed doors, unexplained absences on weekends, and increasing tension between my parents that they thought I did not notice. But children always know when something is wrong, even if they cannot name it. By the time I turned 14, I had developed a passion for mathematics and design. My teachers recognized my talents and encouraged me to think about careers in architecture or engineering. I was excited about my future and naively believed my family would remain constant through it all. Then came that devastating Sunday morning. I was sitting at the kitchen table working on a school project when my father walked in with a small suitcase. My mother stood by the sink, her eyes red and puffy from crying all night. Without any real emotion in his voice, Dad announced he was leaving. "This is not working for me anymore," he said, as if he were quitting a job rather than abandoning his family. No real explanation followed. No apology. No promise to stay in touch. Just a cold, businesslike exit. After he left, my mother collapsed into one of the kitchen chairs and sobbed. I had never seen her so broken before. I put my arms around her shoulders, trying to comfort her while fighting back my own tears. That was the day I had to grow up faster than any 14-year-old should. The financial impact hit us immediately. Dad had apparently emptied their joint accounts before leaving. We almost lost our home in those first few months. Mom had to take on a second job as a waitress, in addition to her teaching position. I started mowing lawns and doing odd jobs around the neighborhood to contribute what little I could. My last memory of my father was watching him drive away in his blue sedan without even a backward glance. No birthday cards ever came. No child support checks. No phone calls. It was as if we had ceased to exist in his world the moment he walked out our front door. For years afterward, I carried both anger and confusion. What had we done wrong? Why were we not enough for him? I tried calling his cell phone a few times in those early months, but it had been disconnected. I even persuaded my mother to drive me to his office once, only to learn he had quit his job and left no forwarding address. Through it all, Mom and I became a team. We supported each other, celebrated small victories, and built a new kind of family unit. She worked so hard sometimes, coming home after midnight from her second job with exhaustion etched into her face. Yet she never complained, never badmouthed my father in front of me, and never let me doubt that I was loved. I made a promise to myself during those difficult years. I would succeed despite his abandonment. I would build a life so fulfilling that his absence would eventually feel insignificant. That determination carried me through some very dark times. College became my path forward. I earned a partial architectural scholarship to the state university, supplemented by student loans and the money I had saved from years of part-time jobs. My mother cried at my high school graduation, telling me how proud she was. The empty seat where a father should have been barely registered anymore. Or so I told myself. University life presented its own challenges. While other students had parents helping with tuition or sending care packages, I worked 20 hours weekly at the campus bookstore and as a tutor to make ends meet. During summers, I took full-time construction jobs to learn the practical side of building while earning money for the next semester. Despite the financial pressures, I thrived academically. Architecture combined everything I loved: mathematics, art, and the practical creation of spaces where people would live their lives. I graduated with honors, my mother cheering loudly from the audience. Again, I noticed the empty seat beside her, but pushed the thought away. My career started modestly as a junior draftsman at a small firm in Chicago. I lived with my mother for that first year, helping her financially while saving for my own place. When a prominent architectural firm in Boston offered me a position with significant advancement potential, I faced my first real dilemma. Moving meant leaving my mother, the only constant in my life. "Go," she told me, with no hesitation. "I will be fine." By then, she had met William, a kind widower who taught at her school. Their relationship was blossoming, and for the first time since my father left, she seemed truly happy again. Boston became my new beginning. Within 5 years, I had advanced to senior architect, designing innovative commercial spaces that garnered industry attention. I purchased my first condominium, a tangible symbol of the stability I had craved since my teen years. More importantly, I met Jasmine at a charity event. She was a pediatric nurse with a laugh that could light up any room and a capacity for compassion that amazed me. Our relationship developed slowly, as I struggled with trust issues rooted in my past. When she stayed patient through my moments of irrational fear that she too would leave, I knew she was different. Meanwhile, my mother married William in a small, joyful ceremony. Seeing her happy again healed something in me I had not realized was still broken. My relationship with my stepfather never tried to replace what I had lost, but instead became something valuable in its own right. At 33, my life had found its rhythm. My career continued to flourish, with several award-winning designs to my name. Jasmine and I got engaged, planning our wedding for the following spring. I had surrounded myself with good friends who became the family I chose. I had even worked through much of my abandonment trauma with a therapist who specialized in family issues. For nearly 20 years, there had been no word from my father, no attempt at contact. I had stopped looking for him in crowds or wondering if he ever thought about me. The past was the past, and my future looked bright. Then the email arrived that would upend everything. "Hello, Maurice," it began. "You do not know me, but I am your stepsister, Amanda. We need to talk about our father." I stared at that email for a full 10 minutes before I could process its implications. Our father. Not my father. Our father. Somewhere in the recesses of my mind, I had known he might have started another family. But seeing confirmation of it in black and white text hit harder than expected. The email went on to explain that I had 3 stepsiblings: Amanda 28, Tyler 26, and Zoe 23. My father had remarried their mother less than 6 months after walking out on us. The timeline suggested his relationship with their mother had begun before he left mine. After consulting with Jasmine and taking a day to collect my thoughts, I agreed to a phone call with Amanda. Her voice was eerily reminiscent of our father's, with the same slight southern accent he had retained from his childhood in Georgia. "Dad has cancer," she told me, without preamble. "It is in remission now, but it was touch and go for a while. It made him reevaluate his life, his regrets. He talks about you often." That statement alone told me she knew nothing of the truth. If he had been talking about me often, he would have reached out himself, not sent his daughter as an emissary nearly 2 decades after abandoning me. He was young and confused when he left. Amanda continued, her voice taking on a pleading quality. "He made terrible mistakes, but he has changed. He wants to make amends before it is too late." Every justification she offered felt like a fresh wound. Young. He had been 36 when he left. Confused, his departure had been methodically planned down to the emptying of bank accounts. These were not the actions of someone making an impulsive mistake. I told Amanda I would think about it, and ended the call. That night I barely slept, old nightmares resurfacing. Jasmine held me as I finally broke down, releasing years of carefully contained emotion. "Whatever you decide, I am with you," she promised. "But do this for yourself, not for him or these siblings." My therapist offered similar advice when I called for an emergency session. "Consider what closure might look like for you," she suggested. not what they want or expect. Before I could reach any decision, the choice was partially taken from me. 3 days later, Amanda, Tyler, and Zoe appeared unannounced at my office. The receptionist, unaware of the situation, had sent them right in. They were clearly siblings, sharing the same straight nose and dimpled smile that I recognized from my own mirror. It was disconcerting to see my features reflected in these strangers who shared my blood, but none of my history. "We thought it would be easier in person," Amanda explained while Tyler looked uncomfortable, and Zoe seemed fascinated by the architectural models displayed around my office. They pressured me into joining them for dinner, where their campaign began in earnest. They shared carefully selected stories about our father painting a picture of a devoted family man who coached Little League and never missed a dance recital. Each anecdote was like a knife highlighting exactly what he had denied me. As the meal progressed, I learned the most disturbing truth. They had known nothing about me until their father's cancer diagnosis 2 years ago. For nearly 16 years, Thomas Jackson had pretended I did not exist. He told us he had made terrible mistakes in his youth, Tyler explained. But we never knew those mistakes included abandoning a son. When they spoke of his remorse, his desire to reconnect, I asked the obvious question. If he regrets his actions so deeply, why is he not here himself? He was afraid you would refuse to see him, Zoe said quietly. She at least seemed to understand the magnitude of what her father had done. I agreed to consider meeting him, mostly to end the ambush dinner. I needed time to process this new reality, where my father had been living a full, happy life, just a few hours' drive away, while I had struggled through adolescence without him. That time was not granted. 2 days later, my doorbell rang on a Saturday afternoon. Jasmine opened it to find all 3 siblings, and standing behind them, the man I had not seen since I was 14 years old. Thomas Jackson had aged. His once dark hair was now silver. His face lined his frame, thinner than I remembered. But his eyes were the same, that distinctive hazel color I saw in my own reflection. He stepped forward uncertainly. "Maurice," he said, his voice so familiar. It made my chest ache. "You look so much like your mother. Not I missed you. Not I am sorry." Just an observation about my appearance that managed to reference my mother rather than accept any connection to himself. It was so characteristic of the emotional distance I remembered that I almost laughed. The next hour passed in a blur of awkward conversation. My father spoke of his illness, his recovery, his newfound appreciation for family. He mentioned his successful real estate development company, his comfortable retirement, his pride in his children, as if I were not also his child. When he finally murmured a rehearsed apology about not being there for me, something felt off. The step-siblings exchanged glances. Jasmine, who had stayed protectively by my side, squeezed my hand. "Why now?" I asked directly. "After 20 years of silence. Why? Reach out now." The uncomfortable silence that followed told me everything. It was Zoe who finally spoke the truth. "Dad needs a kidney transplant," she said, ignoring her siblings' warning glances. "The cancer treatment damaged his kidneys. We have all been tested, but none of us are compatible matches. So there it was. Not remorse, not love, not even curiosity about the son he had abandoned. He needed something from me. A spare part. His appearance in my life was as transactional as his departure had been. Something inside me that had been held tightly in check for 20 years finally broke loose. Years of suppressed rage, hurt, and abandonment came pouring out. "You missed my high school graduation." I started, my voice surprisingly calm. "You missed my college acceptance. You missed watching me graduate with honors in architecture. You missed my first job, my first design award, my engagement." With each milestone listed, my voice grew stronger. "You missed every birthday, from my 15th to my 34th. You missed helping me learn to drive, apply to college, navigate dating. You missed being there when Mom and I almost lost our house because you emptied the accounts before leaving." I turned to my step-siblings, whose shocked expressions told me they had not known the full story. "Did he tell you?" "He left without a word of explanation, that he never paid $1 of child support, that I tried to call him for months. After he left, my father's face had gone pale, but I was beyond caring. Now you need a kidney, and suddenly you remember you have another son. One you threw away like garbage, but who might be useful to you now." He attempted to interrupt, to offer explanations about being young and foolish, about being trapped in a marriage that made him unhappy. Each excuse only fueled my anger. I was 14 years old. I shouted, finally losing the last of my composure. A child. What threat did I pose to your happiness, that you had to cut me out of your life completely? Was your new family so perfect that acknowledging my existence would have ruined? The fantasy Amanda tried to intervene, suggesting I was being unfair, that people deserved second chances. That was when Jasmine stepped forward. Second chances are earned, she said firmly. They are not an entitlement. Maurice deserved a father for the past 20 years. Where were those second chances then? My father finally found his voice. But it was only to suggest that family should help family, that his mortality had made him realize the importance of healing old wounds. Not once did he acknowledge the depth of his abandonment or show genuine remorse for the years of absence. You need to leave, I said, finally, my anger giving way to exhaustion. All of you. This was never about reconciliation. It was about what I could give you. The answer is nothing. I owe you nothing. As they filed out, Zoe hung back briefly. I am sorry, she whispered. I did not know. The days following that confrontation were a storm of emotions. Initially, I felt guilty for my outburst, then angry at myself for feeling guilty. Jasmine reassured me that my reaction had been justified, even restrained considering the circumstances. You spoke your truth, she said. After 20 years of silence, you deserved that much. I called my mother to tell her about the encounter, dreading that it might reopen old wounds for her. But the woman who answered the phone was not the devastated wife I remembered from that terrible day. She was strong, fulfilled, and long past allowing Thomas Jackson any power over her happiness. You know what I think sometimes, Maurice, she said after listening to my story. I think he did us a favor by leaving. Not in how he did it, but the fact that he did. We built something beautiful without him. Would you trade the man you are today for a different version raised by someone capable of such callousness? Her perspective shifted something in me. The encounter had been painful, but it had also been clarifying. For years, a small part of me had wondered if I had somehow been responsible for my father walking away. Now I understood with complete certainty that the deficiency had been in him, not me. A week after the confrontation, I received an email from Zoe. Unlike her siblings, she expressed genuine remorse for their ambush and for the pain their father had caused. I always wondered why Dad never talked about his life before he met our mom, she wrote. Now I understand he was hiding, not healing. I appreciated her honesty and agreed to meet her for coffee, separate from any family reconciliation agenda. We have since developed a cautious friendship. She is not responsible for her father's actions, and there is something healing in connecting with this sister who shares half my blood. As for my father, I sent him a brief letter after much thought. I did not offer forgiveness, as that would imply an ongoing relationship I had no interest in pursuing. Instead, I wished him well with his health issues and made it clear that I had closed that chapter of my life. His response, if he sent one, was returned unopened. Jasmine and I married that spring, in a celebration surrounded by people who had chosen to be in our lives. My mother and William beamed from the front row. Friends who had become family filled the seats. The absence of my biological father was not even noteworthy. Through ongoing therapy, I have come to understand that I do not need closure from him to move forward with my life. The closure comes from within, from recognizing that his absence shaped, but did not define me. I learned that family is not about biology, but about choice. Every day we choose who we allow into our inner circle, who we trust with our hearts, who we prioritize. My father made his choice 20 years ago. I have made mine now. The news reached me through Zoe that he received a successful kidney transplant from an anonymous donor. I felt relief not for his sake, but because it meant the chapter was truly finished. There would be no more medical emergencies to serve as excuses for contact. No more guilt trips orchestrated by well-meaning but misguided children. I am building my own family now. Jasmine and I are expecting our first child next spring. When I think about fatherhood, I find myself focusing not on the example I was given, but on the father I choose to be. I will be present. I will be honest. I will demonstrate through daily actions that family bonds are sacred and unbreakable. The legacy of abandonment ends with me. My child will never question their worth or wonder why they were not enough. That is the most powerful response I can offer to my father's choices. Have you ever had someone from your past try to re-enter your life when they suddenly needed something from you? How did you handle it? If my story connected with you in any way, please leave a comment below, sharing your experience. Your words might help someone else feeling alone in their journey. Do not forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories about overcoming challenges. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember that you are worthy of relationships based on genuine care, not convenience or utility. Be well, and I will see you in the next video.